So F9 is finally released all over the globe. So today we're going to stop and rank all 10 final races, final battles, whatever you want to call them, from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place, and consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 10 final races, final battles, finales of the Fast and Furious movies. My list is not the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. And as we go into it, this is kind of an odd ranking because these movies morphed so much throughout the course of the franchise. So you are literally comparing street races to space cars by the end of it. It's weird. Let's get started. Coming in last place, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. Now, I know a bunch of you absolutely love this movie. I'm just not one of those people. In fact, earlier today at church, someone confronted me in person for putting this movie too low on my movies ranking. But it just doesn't make a big enough impact on me. I don't care enough about the characters or the coming of age story involving street racing and the Yakuza. Therefore, the finale is just pretty forgettable for me. It's just more street racing stuff where Sean, like me, finally learns how to Tokyo drift, and then I kind of forget everything else about it. A big part of the problem here is that the sequence involving Han dying is the far more memorable sequence and much more consequential for the franchise as a whole, in which case it just casts a shadow over the finale, and I just completely forget what happens in it. In fact, I had to rewatch the finale before doing this video so that I would even remember exactly what happened. Coming in at number 9, Fate of the Furious. Now, this is a fun enough sequence with a bunch of wacky hijinks taking place, but this is the one where I feel like they're just trying way too hard to come up with some bizarre scenario to do with cars without it being all that particularly interesting. To that point, the best things about this finale are Jason Statham with the baby in the plane. That was actually quite a bit of fun. And Vin Diesel killing the Game of Thrones guy to get revenge. Those are the kind of the two standouts, but all of the stuff involving a high-speed chase involving sports cars and a submarine, it just didn't fully land for me. And I think a big part of that is that a flat sheet of ice with big explosions just isn't as dynamic and interesting as most of the environments where these finales take place. Likewise, there's a bunch of interesting stuff you can do involving cars on ice, but it doesn't fit the mold of what they want for a finale. They want something bombastic, and the fun thing about a car on ice is the slow tension of watching it slowly creak. That's not really what you can do, and so they even wasted the potential of the situation to have a submarine shooting torpedoes on top of ice and having The Rock throw it. So it's ludicrous. I mean, it is fun enough, but it just doesn't make much of an impact at all. Next up, F9. Now, when it comes to all the wacky, cartoonish stuff in this finale, I was just eating it up. Whether you're talking about the totally nonsensical magnet thing that they were using that broke all the laws of physics but created a bunch of carnage involving cars, I just had an absolute blast with all of that. And then every time it would cut to outer space, and Roman was driving a car in space, I got a gigantic grin on my face. Is it stupid? Yes, it is. Proudly so, and I was having so much fun. Problem you kind of run into is that it is just meaningless shenanigans. This movie made it very clear there are no real stakes. These characters can't die. They've got incredibly strong plot armor. We know, of course, the terrorists aren't going to win, so you never really buy into the urgency of anything that's taking place in those moments. And then as it tries to have kind of the family stuff play off with Dom and Jacob, you don't feel anything. Neither one of them made a meaningful gesture. It was just that the people Jacob was working with, they betrayed him, so he decided to team up with the person that was trying to stop the people that betrayed him, who happened to be Dom. It's not that the two brothers actually resolved their differences, and so you didn't even have the emotional payoff of the brother stuff the movie dedicated so much time to. So love all the wild cartoonish stuff, certainly compromises the integrity of the franchise in a whole bunch of different ways, but it's fun to watch. Number 7, Fast and Furious. This one is almost kind of the opposite for me of what I said about F9, because I felt it was able to have kind of a satisfying payoff for the journey that Dom and Brian have been on, but the actual action side to it didn't work quite as well for me. The big advantage for the finale of this film is that this was a revenge film, so there's a very, very clear villain that we wanted to see taken out, clear mission and objective for Brian and Dom, and a choice that Dom had to make whether he's going to kill this guy or turn him into the police, and whether Dom was going to run or embrace the consequences of his choices. And so it had a very satisfying finale when it came to the actual journey that Dom in particular was on. The actual specifics of the action, I thought was a little bit lackluster. The concept of them having this high-speed chase through the tunnels and everything, I think works better there than it does in practice, because when you're in a confined space moving that fast, you just can't see enough, the dynamic doesn't feel quite right, and you can't actually do a bunch of that stuff, and so it felt phony. And then from there, they're like in a flat field of dirt, which isn't the most interesting thing to look at. So this is one that worked on the character level more than the action level. Then we have The Fast and the Furious. Now, while this is one of the better films in the franchise, the actual final sequence of this movie is one of the weaker aspects of the film. Certain parts of it work really nicely. There's a lot of practical stunt work, actual cars flipping through the air and wild things happening. Of course, as you have those final moments between Brian and Dom, where Brian has decided to kind of essentially join Dom's family as much as he can in these circumstances, and then gives him the 10-second car at the end, has nice payoff for the movie. But the thing that sets in motion the finale is that the immature mechanic guy loses a race, doesn't turn over his keys, so the rival gang shows up and guns him down. And these are all like the least memorable characters in the film and the least interesting plot lines in the film, because the rival gang was just a red herring, and not a particularly good one at that, until this moment where suddenly they're villainous because they killed a character that wasn't our favorite character anyway. And so they picked some of the weakest stuff in the movie to set up the finale. So it just doesn't feel like it works all that well on a story level, even though there's some nice little moments. In 5th place, Too Fast, Too Furious. Now, I know this movie is one of the punching bags of the franchise. Most people hate it. I've always enjoyed and had a soft spot for this film, and I would say that this is an improvement over the finale of the original film because it ties the plot lines together much better, where you have Brian and Roman having to try and outmaneuver and outsmart the drug dealers, as well as the police who are chasing, as well as the FBI people that they're working with. And so it just feels like a much better thought out finale. In it, you have double crosses, you have car stunts, you have wacky car stunts taking place. You get this epic line from Roman. No, I totally get this is not one of the better movies in the franchise, but as a finale, as a sequence in and of itself, and as the conclusion to this movie, I think it works pretty well in delivering the stuff that you want with cars in a movie like this, as well as tying up the loose ends, having little character moments, and just having fun. In 4th place, Hobbs and Shaw. Now, this isn't a finale that has a bunch of emotional payoff or a great send-off or anything like that. It's just a 3-part final battle that puts a big, gigantic grin on my face. It kicks off with a bunch of Samoans battling an army of mercenaries with sticks and fire and all sorts of primal technology. It leads into this car chase where you both have The Rock lassoing a helicopter, and then he holds the helicopter using a chain to keep it from escaping or whatever takes place. And then it closes out with Jason Statham and The Rock battling a cybernetically enhanced Idris Elba in slow-mo, and it's just a fun sequence that delivers all the wacky insanity, over-the-top stuff that I want while having variety and showing stuff that I never knew that I wanted to see, but I'm so glad that it now exists. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Fast and Furious final battles, races, sequences, finales, whatever you want to call them. As I said before, my list is not the right list. It's just my list, and this is a weird one to make a list out of, and so we're going to disagree probably by a lot. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I did rank the movies just a couple days ago. You can check that out right up here to hear what I thought about the movies as a whole. In third place, The Fast and the Furious 6. Now, by this point in time, the franchise had very clearly started to transition into a cartoonish reality where the laws of physics were, more negotiable. But that led to this amazing sequence where you have cars battling a plane, trying to keep it on the ground while it's on this 30-mile long runway. Inside the plane, you have The Rock and Vin Diesel teaming up to wrestle fight a guy. You have all sorts of just insane things taking place. At the end, a car shoots out the front of an exploding airplane. The goofiness that I love about the later era of this franchise, but at the same time, this movie still had stakes. And what I mean by that is that this movie actually kills off Wonder Woman. She died and she stayed dead. So at this point in time in the franchise, there were still things that could happen that mattered, that people could die from the things taking place. The later films, stakes are off the table because you know everyone's invincible, but at this point in time, you could still feel a little bit of something when someone was in danger because they would still kill characters off. And then the fun part about this one, it closes out with a classic Fast and Furious Toretto barbecue, and the adversary from the previous film, The Rock, shows up at the barbecue, establishing a future pattern of doing things like that. Our runner-up, Fast 5, a bizarrely satisfying conclusion to this movie where somehow it just feels right that they would close out this heist by having 2 sports cars pull a bank vault down a road and have a high-speed chase filled with all sorts of carnage and mayhem in a downtown area. And as over the top as it is, it doesn't go full-blown cartoonish. It's just close enough to being something that might be possible and was done practical enough that as you're watching, you're thinking like, could 2 sports cars pull a bank vault like that? Other thing that worked nicely for this particular one is that once again, they set up a villain in the movie that you wanted to see take it out. There's just enough of a revenge element in the finale that it leads to this great moment where Hobbs finishes off the bad guy. Help me. And in keeping with the Ocean's 11 with Cars vibe of this entire movie, even has a final twist reveal where you realize what Dom was up to the entire time and outmaneuvers Hobbs, so the whole gang is able to end up with a ton of money. All of it leading to this just joyful epilogue where you see the entire gang off with their money and you kind of learn something about them of what their version of the fantasy life is, and you discover what they would spend their money on. It's just a really nice way to end a movie that was already very enjoyable. In first place is Furious 7. This final battle has just about everything that you could want. It's all out car wars in LA. The Rock is firing a minigun at drones.
Woman, I am the cavalry.
Paul Walker and Tony Jaa have a fight, and Paul Walker wins, one of the most unbelievable things that happens in this entire franchise. And then Vin Diesel and Jason Statham have a lightsaber battle on top of a building. What more could a grown man with stunted emotional development want? Well, this movie decided to give us just one more thing. These movies are certainly known for their soap opera and their melodrama and getting sappy at times. They're not usually known for getting emotional, but you probably don't have a heart if you didn't start to feel a little bit of something during that final ride sequence. Of all the things this franchise has done wrong, it did a fantastic job of sending off Brian Walker's character, respecting the legacy of Paul Walker, and ending this movie on the right note. So because it had awesome action, memorable sequences, and a great send-off for Brian's character, it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it, you can check out my Fast and Furious movies ranking right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.